Welcome to our video about the fascinating world of Pokemon and their placement on the Tree of Life. Today, we take a closer look at Marowak and its relationship with all bird Pokemon. Ready? Let's go! Ornithischians are a group of dinosaurs. According to the system established in 1887 by Harry Govier Seeley of King's College London, which long shaped the understanding of dinosaur classification, they were, alongside the Saurischians, lizard-hip dinosaurs, one of the two major orders or evolutionary lineages. This division marked a major step forward in grasping their relationships. By that time, several well-preserved dinosaur skeletons had already been described, and Seeley noticed they could be sorted into two groups based on pelvic anatomy. He named them Saurischia and Ornithischia. More recent approaches place Ornithischia as the sister group to Theropoda within a newly proposed clade called Ornithoscelida. The arrangement of the pelvic bones in Ornithischians resembles that of birds, which inspired Seeley's naming. While the ischium and ilium are oriented similarly to those in Saurischians, the pubis does not point downward and slightly forward. Instead, it's a thin rod-like bone running parallel to the ischium and pointing backward. This forms a two-pronged pelvic structure, whereas Saurischians exhibit a three-pronged pelvis. In some Ornithischians, especially those from the late Cretaceous like Ceratopsia and Ankylosauria, this setup is altered. The pubis is shortened and forms a forward-pointing process called the prepubis, though the basic structure remains recognizable. The reason behind the backward-turned pubis remains unclear due to missing fossil evidence from early development stages. An explanation solely based on a bipedal lifestyle is challenged by its absence in similar bipedal Saurischians, like Colophysis. Conversely, species like Hypsilophodontidae, part of Ornithischia, show a forward-pointing prepubic process, making them more similar to Saurischian pelvic anatomy. One possibility is that muscles responsible for thigh movement began attaching to bones other than the pubis. This could have allowed the pubis to shrink or shift backward, giving the thigh more mobility and creating more space for the digestion of plant material. Another factor may have been the more favorable center of gravity for these frequently bipedal dinosaurs. Beyond pelvic differences, this group shows other unique traits absent in Saurischians. All Ornithischians had a bone at the tip of their lower jaw, the predentary. Slightly less conspicuous are rows of elongated vertebral processes, likely helping to stabilize and support the back. Unlike Saurischians, Ornithischians were purely herbivorous and displayed far greater species diversity. Pachycephalosauria is a taxon, a systematic group, within the bird-hipped dinosaurs, Ornithischia. These were bipedal, presumably herbivorous dinosaurs, distinguished by a strikingly thickened skull roof. Fossils of Pachycephalosauria have been found in both the Middle Jurassic and across the Cretaceous periods in North America and Asia. For many species, only poorly preserved fossils exist, often just fragments of the skull roof. Only a few genera are known from complete skulls or postcranial skeletons, so much about this group remains vague. Pachycephalosaurians were generally small, bipedal dinosaurs. Size estimates are speculative. Some of the smallest, like Micropachycephalosaurus, may have been under 1 meter long, while the largest genera, such as Pachycephalosaurus, reached lengths of up to 4.5 meters. The most distinctive skull feature was the thickened skull roof, formed by the frontal and parietal bones. There were two basic types. Flat-headed species had separated bones with sutures and a thickened but non-domed skull surface. In contrast, other Pachycephalosaurians had these bones fused into a frontoparietal, forming a dome-shaped structure. The supratemporal fenestra, an opening in the temple region, was prominent in flat-headed types, but very small or closed in dome-headed species. Below the thickened skull roof, the squamosal bone showed a series of bony bumps laterally and posteriorly, which in some genera like Stygomoloch and Drecorex were extended into horn-like projections. Other skull regions, such as the postorbital, behind the eye, or nasal bone, could also bear bony knobs. The eye socket, orbit, was reinforced by two bones above it called supraorbitals. Pachycephalosaurians had different types of teeth, heterodonty. The premaxilla, frontmost part of the upper jaw, held several peg-like, slightly curved teeth, with the last one often enlarged like a canine. Behind this was a gap known as a diastema. The maxilla, main upper jaw bone carried relatively small teeth with triangular, slightly serrated crowns. The lower jaw is known from only a few genera. The lower teeth were usually similar to the maxillary ones, though in some genera, like Goiocephali, the frontmost tooth was notably enlarged. The predentary, the frontmost part of the lower jaw, has not yet been found in this group, but traces suggest Pachycephalosauria, like all Ornithischians, likely possessed a beak-like horny structure. To date, only a few genera have yielded fossils of the torso or limbs. So many aspects of their anatomy, such as the number and structure of cervical vertebrae or the shape of the hands, remain unknown. Their trunk was relatively stocky, and the spine had notable features. The dorsal vertebrae were reinforced by interlocking joints. The sacral vertebrae, which formed the sacrum, had long sacral ribs. The front tail vertebrae also bore ribs, while the rear tail vertebrae were stiffened by chevron bones, V-shaped projections on the underside, and ossified tendons. The scapula was slender and elongated, while the forelimbs were very short, reaching only about a quarter of the length of the hind limbs. The structure of the hand remains unknown, as previously mentioned. The pelvis was very broad and especially notable for the near absence of the pubis in the hip joint socket, acetabulum. The hind legs were long, with the lower legs being slightly longer than the thighs. The foot likely bore 3 functional toes, digits 2, 3, and 4, with the middle one being the largest. The first toe was significantly reduced, and the fifth was completely absent. The toes ended in conical but non-curved, hoof-like claws. Definitive Pachycephalosauria fossils have only been found in East Asia and North America, with questionable remains reported from Europe. Thus, current knowledge suggests that these dinosaurs were restricted to the northern hemisphere. The North American finds consist almost exclusively of skull domes, which often show signs of having been carried away by rivers after the animals died. This may indicate that they lived far from fossilization-friendly environments, such as mountainous regions. In contrast, Asian specimens are often better preserved and suggest different habitats, often near lakes or rivers. However, these interpretations remain uncertain and may be overturned by future discoveries. Pachycephalosaurs moved bipedally, holding the spine roughly horizontal, with their heavy, stiff tail acting as a counterbalance to the front of the body. Since the lower legs were longer than the thighs, it's believed these animals could have achieved relatively high running speeds. The dental structure points to a mainly herbivorous diet, although the specific functions of the different tooth types are still unclear. The front, peg-like teeth may have served to grasp food, while the rear teeth possibly aided in chewing. The broad torso suggests the presence of a large digestive tract for further food breakdown. Based on their body build, these dinosaurs likely fed on low-growing plants, such as leaves, stems, seeds, and fruits, possibly supplemented by insects, small animals, or eggs. The function of the thickened skull roof remains one of the most debated topics in pachycephalosaur paleobiology. In the 1950s, paleontologists E. Colbert and L. Davitashvili almost simultaneously proposed the idea that it may have been used for headbutting. Various anatomical features have been cited to support this theory, such as the interlocking dorsal vertebra, which may have absorbed the impact of blows, as well as interpretations of the pelvic structure. However, no cervical vertebrae have been discovered for pachycephalosaurs so far. Bones, which might provide important clues about posture and movement, and would likely show specialized adaptations if the skulls were indeed used for ramming. The presence of sexual dimorphism in Stegosaurus skulls has led to the hypothesis that the skull structure may have served for intraspecific interactions, rather than for defense against predators, a view that remains the most plausible to this day. The most popular interpretation presents these dinosaurs engaging in head-to-head combat. They were believed to lower their skulls and charge at one another, similar to modern horned animals like bighorn sheep. This view was thoroughly developed by Peter Galton. Other theories challenge this, suggesting that the animals may not have rammed each other's heads directly, but instead aimed for the flanks of their opponents. First proposed by Hans-Dieter Sues in 1978 and revisited by Kenneth Carpenter in 1997, this perspective argues that dome-headed pachycephalosaurs, especially Stygimoloch with its sharply pointed skull, had a head structure far too small to serve effectively as an impact surface. Carpenter considered it plausible, however, that flat-headed species might have engaged in ramming or shoving contests with their skulls. Other paleontologists, such as Ralph E. Chapman, maintain that even the domed skulls of pachycephalosaurs could have been suitable for head-to-head impacts. Yet another theory proposes that their skulls were not suited for ramming at all. A study by Mark Goodwin and John Horner concluded that the skulls were permeated by fine blood vessels, making them ill-suited to withstand blows, whether to the head or the flank. According to this theory, the thick skull domes and spiky occipital structures of these dinosaurs served solely for display or species recognition, rather than physical combat. Teresa Marianska and colleagues have suggested that different genera of pachycephalosaurs may have employed various methods, implying that behavioral diversity existed across the group. Depending on the skull shape, impacts might have been delivered to the flanks, to the head, or served purely visual, display purposes. Ultimately, the function of the thickened skull roof cannot be definitively answered at present. Undisputed fossil records of Pachycephalosauria exist only from the late Cretaceous period, Santonian to Maastrichtian, dated between 85 and 66 million years ago, and only from East Asia and North America. However, several poorly preserved finds suggest an earlier and wider distribution, Fergunocephal from the Middle Jurassic of Central Asia, and Yaverlandia and Stenopilix from the early Cretaceous of Europe. These remains are highly fragmentary. Fergunocephal, for example, is known only from teeth, and do not allow for reliable systematic classification. Some authors, such as Robert Sullivan, 2006, therefore do not include these three genera within Pachycephalosauria. The internal systematics of Pachycephalosauria are debated, mainly because for many genera, only the skull roof or parts of the skull are known. Traditionally, they were divided into two subgroups, the Homalocephalidae, characterized by a flat skull roof and large supratemporal fenestrae, upper skull openings near the temple region, and the Pachycephalosauridae, which had domed, arched skull roofs and small or closed supratemporal fenestrae. The Homalocephalidae were considered more primitive, while the Pachycephalosauridae were seen as more derived. However, Homalocephalidae had long been recognized as paraphyletic since Pachycephalosauridae evolved from within them. As such, they do not form a natural group. The discovery of Dracorex has unsettled these classifications. This genus displays some more advanced traits and is likely closely related to the domed pachycephalosaurs, such as Pachycephalosaurus and Stygimoloch, yet it has a flat skull. This led Robert Sullivan to propose that the flat skull is actually a derived trait. As a result, he rejects the older classifications and groups all representatives under Pachycephalosauridae. That's it for now. In the next episode, we take a closer look at Hitmonlee and its surprising connection to Clefable. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and check in next time.